with your chest.
I'll say it with my chest. You say it with your mouth. You don't say anything with your chest. Say it with your mouth. Crazy. Say it with your chest. Let's see where we go. Don't know what to say for you. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, good deal. The mainstream economy and the white majority. Our competitive and race in our competitive and race-based society, why would the majority white society want to throw the doors of economic opportunity wide open to blacks? That is not the nature of competitors who play a game of I have mine and I'm going to get yours. The majority society's economic model extends its economy into black communities and pursues the black consumer. To support their economic model, various levels of government and private corporations encourage economic development that is not in the best interest of black Americans. They routinely offer black Americans marginal jobs while non black businesses exploit the resources, labor, and consumer dollars within black neighborhoods. They routinely offer black Americans marginal jobs while non black businesses exploit the resources, labor, and consumer dollars within black neighborhoods. They offer minimum public assistance in the form of housing, food, home heating, and health care subsidies. In the last 2 decades, many of the nation's leading think tanks and academicians have come to realize that abandoned urban cities contain a wealth of infrastructure assets, such as waterways, transportation systems, and commercial buildings. Whites are buying and renovating property and moving back into the inner cities, spawning an economic rebound. One of the leading proponents of urban economic redevelopment is Michael E. Porter, a professor of business administration at Harvard Business School. During the last 20 years, Porter has written a number of books about competitiveness in business and industry. In his most recent book on competition, he devoted an entire chapter to the competitive advantage of the inner city. Porter pointed out the traditional negatives associated with black communities, but he also suggested numerous business advantages that can be found in urban cities. His recommendations for inner city business developments are very similar to the traditional social models that give white businessmen opportunities to build wealth and businesses in black neighborhoods while blacks get jobs and places to spend their money. Porter must be given credit, however, for Porter must be given credit, however, for offering an economic model that points out the economic advantages of building businesses within urban black cities. The major shortcoming of his model from the perspective of Powernomics is that it does not intend to make black Americans self sufficient and competitive within their own communities. It is a model of economic growth for non blacks within black neighborhoods. Porter's model has strong moral and ideological overtones. His philosophy is similar to that of Booker T. Washington's admonishment that whites would be willing to invest and build businesses in inner cities if the residents clean up their crime and improve their work habits. When groups are competing for wealth and resources, such admonishments, when groups are competing for wealth and resources, such admonishments to black Americans are disingenuous, and reflect the structural racism discussed in chapter 1. I have never heard of white I've never heard a white businessman say to Asian, Jewish, Hispanic, or American Indian communities that if you clean yourselves up, white businessmen will be willing to come into your communities, develop businesses, displace your income, and give community members jobs. hmm Black Americans were brought to this country to be a labor force. Black Americans were brought to this country to be a labor force. Their problem is not the lack of jobs. The lack of jobs is a symptom of their lack of wealth and businesses to produce jobs. The lack of jobs is a symptom of their lack of wealth and businesses that produce jobs. Our society does not prioritize creating businesses for blacks the way it does for other groups. Our society does not prioritize creating businesses for blacks the way it does for other groups. In Washington, D.C., in the Washington, D.C. area, there are ongoing efforts by levels of government, schools, banks, and businesses to prepare Asians and Hispanics for business careers, but seldom, if ever, is the focus on blacks, even though Asians and Hispanics already surpass blacks in business ownership. The assimilated groups within the majority society come to this country voluntarily in the search of wealth and fortune. According to a front page story in the Washington Post, May 25th, 1998, any group that does not have an economic structure is heading for trouble. The groups that hold the most control over their financial, human capital, and markets will be the most competitive groups. Porter's economic model would be more of a positive for blacks if it encouraged the guided black entrepreneurs to compete and keep control of their own communities and cities by revitalizing, building, owning, and controlling their own businesses. As stated earlier, Porter's economic models contain much that is positive, but they are designed to maintain the status quo on wealth and power. They do not address the structural wealth inequality, which is the very difficult knot. race problem. New orientation. The new orientation for Black America within the framework of a national plan is the practice of group economics. When our ethno-aggregation paradigm is combined with the traditional practice of group economics, it reshapes the concept of ethno-economics. The primary goal of practicing group economics or powernomics is to draw wealth, income, and other resources into black communities and to make them more economically self sufficient and competitive. The practice of group economics is not new. To successfully compete, black entrepreneurs will need some competitive advantages. The action steps proposed later in this chapter are designed to give Black America some of the advantages that whites and other ethnic groups have in the marketplace. Black people are 400 years behind. Black people are 400 years behind the majority of society and various ethnic groups in structuring their own economy. Our new orientation is built on understanding the cycle of wealth production and getting ahead of the curve, not following it. The principles of wealth building, as shown in Figure 12, will repeat themselves just as history does. The wealth cycle will shift from technology to control of resources at some point in the not too future. The wealth cycle will shift from technology to control of resources at some point in the not too distant future. Before the shift occurs, blacks can position themselves to lead rather than the hind dog to lead, rather than the hind dog as the lead, can position themselves as the lead rather than the hind dog. Technology, wealth, and new orientation. Technology, wealth, and new orientation. Where does technology fit into the new orientation of group economics and the cycle of wealth for blacks? Many social observers and prognosticators argue that access to computers, the information highway, and other advanced technology is the salvation of black Americans. There is a subtle suggestion that technology is blind to color. Therefore, in theory, it does not matter who owns and controls technology, just as long as black people have access to it. Just as long as black people have access to it, they can overcome structural racism. This is blatantly untrue. Black people must not be misled by the computer hype and technology euphoria. Technology is and always has been just as much a political tool as it has been an economic tool. Technological tools are deployed to the advantage of those who own and control them. Like all previous technology, computer driven technology is not necessarily a friend of black people. Blacks have never been major owners, producers, or controllers of technology. Structural racism holds blacks in place as a labor class until new technology comes along and wipes out that place. For example, in the early 1900s, cotton picking machines that could pick 50 times more cotton per hour forced black Americans to leave the cotton fields and move north in search of work. 50 years later, economic machinery forced blacks from the steel mills, automobile, and chemical factories of the north onto welfare, criminal, and unemployment roles of urban areas. Black Americans never owned or produced the automation technology that displaced and rendered them an obsolete labor force. In telecommunications, the inventions of the radio, the telephone, and television did not enrich black people. They received the benefits of using radios, telephones, and television, but those who produced and controlled the technology were the ones who became wealthy. In the new paranomics, in the new paranomics orientation, technology is important, but blacks can compete best by getting ahead of technology and owning and controlling the industries from which technology evolves. Knowing ahead is getting ahead. Knowing ahead is getting ahead. A new orientation to group economics requires understanding the cycle of wealth, illustrated in Figure 13. The cycle began with natural resources, minerals, and precious metals. Next, it moved to human labor, especially black slave labor, which drove the engines of civilizations around the world. By the mid 1960s, technology had become a great wealth builder. Technology did the heavy lifting, moving, cleaning, and building. We are currently in the fourth phase, the information and manipulation of symbols. The information and manipulation of symbols. Information manipulators and distributors have emerged as the greatest wealth builders ever. They are making untold billions of dollars moving information instead of tangible goods. The next shift will carry us back to the original starting point, natural resources or other tangible goods. Natural resources and other tangible goods. Blowing up everything. All right. Natural resources. Figure 13, cycle of wealth. Natural resources. Natural resources. Land, minerals, precious metals. Okay? Slavery, human labor. Technology, labor saving machinery. Technology and labor saving machinery. Information and manipulation of symbols. Okay. Since blacks have yet to capture and benefit from the technology phase shown at the bottom of the cycle in figure 13, they could seize a strategically competitive position by advancing directly to the first phase, control of natural resources at the top of the cycle. Building vertical industries and practice group economics. Raw resources stimulate labor. which stimulates production, which stimulates income, which stimulates wealth. Raw resources. Raw resources stimulates labor, which stimulates production, which stimulates income, which stimulates wealth. The foundations of wealth are cyclical. Our global economy is presently in the information phase of wealth formation. The fourth phase of the the fourth phase in the wealth creation cycle, information manipulation, is virtual. Granted, information technology is extremely valuable, but at some point in the fourth phase, it will become a perishable resource. Technology will falter and humans will be at risk. Yeah. Mhm. The value of technology driven information will decrease while the value of tangible goods and human labor will increase. The value of technology driven information will decrease while the value of tangible goods and human labor will increase. Devaluation can be triggered by man made causes such as computer viruses, accident, or uncontrollable natural disasters. Any of these events could drive the wealth building cycle back to the beginning, natural resources. The group that controls those resources will be in the driver's seat. Thus, Black America can get ahead by jumping ahead. Let me back to the beginning. Mhm. Okay. All right. In past wealth cycles, society was able to store goods and services from each wealth building phase because they were tangible, like the natural resources of land, water, and food. They could be stored for prosperity and the enjoyment of future generations, whether it was from a farm, automobile factory, or hospital. It could be stored in warehouses, books, and libraries, and even in burial tombs. Yet, in our computer driven world, when computer users are constantly admonished to save backup copies of their work, what happens when information based goods and services are destroyed and disappear for any reason? Mm-hmm. It's all in the ether. Okay. The United States is abandoning its material existence and giving up its resources to other countries. If cyberspace technology fails for whatever reason, there will be a mad scramble to regain natural resources, the natural resources this nation abandoned. If blacks are the most vulnerable group of people, why are they following white people down a road of complete dependence on technology? If technology fails, white society becomes disabled, blacks will become even more vulnerable. With Powernomics, Black America has an opportunity to move into place and establish itself as backup producer and owner of material resources. How black Americans how black Americans can acquire material resources to compete today, as well as prepare for the negative impact of globalization, is discussed in chapter 6. Okay? When events that shape the next shift when events that shape the next shift in wealth occur, the basis of wealth will move to those who own and control resources. Those who acquired their wealth from information and technology will trade their vast wealth for food, medicine, and other essential resources they need to survive and prosper. Mhm. Those who acquired their wealth from information and technology will trade their vast wealth for food, medicine, and other essential resources they need to survive and prosper. Black people can make up for lost time by moving now to own and control as many essential material assets as possible and be ready to trade and be willing to trade them for other valuables. In the wealth cycle of wealth, material resources always come before technology. Mhm. The action steps below are offered to help Black Americans practice group economics within the framework of a new orientation and national plan for Black America. The strategies include establishing controls and privileges within home and community markets. The strategies include establishing controls and privileges within home and community markets. The strategies include establishing controls and privileges within home or community markets, developing product specialization, product specialization based on culture and consumer patterns, and establishing national and international marketing outlets to achieve economies of scale. Y'all